How are you now? Another day. Big questions. Who are we? What are we trying to become? A life in context is all too missed out on. Life is all too often compartmentalized. Leave your shit at the door. The first time I ever heard leave your problems at the door, it wasn't at a job. It was in acting, music theater, actually. They say leave your emotions, leave your problems at the door. I guess they weren't advanced to teach tapping into your pain in that acting class. It was high school. But it was acting. And that's the main point. It's when you compartmentalize your life, you're acting. You're putting on a mask. And you're not showing your true self. I believe wholeheartedly that forms of self-expression, if they are pure and genuine and authentic, are expressions of the Creator through us. To close ourselves off from a life in context creates a rift between us and greater being. A life in context of self, of God, should not be separate. How can you think of yourself as not God, or as not a part of God? It's not as though you are the center of the universe, but your world somewhat hinges on your perceptions. It's really simple for me to see people as reflections of the Creator, just like I see reflections of the Creator in nature. There's math that's consistent from plant to plant to species. There are patterns and numbers which are consistent in all life. And it's even so far, like the art of aesthetics, or the philosophy of aesthetics is very much rooted in these mathematics, these patterns that can be seen. So we know that it's in us, because we do have an inner world and an outer world. We know that what is within is the lens through which we view what is outside or without. It's strange to think that you are without something. They say the kingdom of heaven is within. So even when you're completely alone, are you really alone? If you are a reflection of the same thing that everything else is reflecting, this is where the idea of distortion comes in. I find a very apt metaphor in auditory distortion, to lose definition, but not because there is too little energy, but because there is too much. I think of anger as a distortion of your perceiving lens, of your ability to perceive as God. Not as God himself, obviously. I shouldn't have to keep saying that, but I will, because people get caught up in the idea that we're all gods, like we're God. And it's like, there's truth to that, but it's not right. To think that you are the master of your own universe is fallacy. Oh, one over here. Howdy. To think that you are the master of your own universe is fallacy. You're the master of many things, and you have been given free will, choice, autonomy, somewhat over your own self. But you don't even know what you are. And I tend to think that we are a confluence of forces, at once perceived as a single avatar. We are the tip of an iceberg, even with multiple sides to be seen above water, but even more unknown below. I feel it's appropriate to mention, and I can't really vouch to where I read this, so apologies if you find me mistaken, but I hear that Islam is somewhat of a translation of the word submission, or to submit. And this sounds violent or oppressive, but it's really not. I hate to bring up, things of a questionable nature, but there is somewhat of a metaphor, and I believe that those who have fallen, deeply enough will understand it, but there is somewhat of a metaphor in a beauty of submission, in a glorification of something that has absolute power over you, and you can make this thing happier, or you can allow yourself to be reprimanded by this thing. But this thing has to be God, and you have to submit only to God. That is the magic, is when you do begin to submit to this force, you begin to, good things will come into your life. It's not an arbitrary rule because I say so, but it's almost unfathomable to think, especially when one is so veiled with their drug addictions, their social hang-ups, their own personal issues, things their traumas. People are so veiled they cannot imagine a world in which magic exists. This is why the field of Gnosticism is interesting to me, because it does rely on a direct experience. But even without that direct experience, shouldn't we be able to take someone's word for something if they are convicted enough? Or are we so jaded that we believe that those who claim to have experience of other lands, even though they've gone to the extremes of the human condition to get there, are, sophists or charlatans? Are we so jaded? Or do you think you could take my word for it? That's everything.